The Sunday brunch table at the Harrison family estate gleamed with inherited silver and fresh flowers that cost more than most people's weekly groceries. I sat in my usual spot, the chair closest to the kitchen positioned so I could help serve when needed, cutting my omelet into small, precise pieces. "Sophie, more coffee," my mother Diane commanded without looking up from her phone, where she was scrolling through photos of her upcoming Mediterranean cruise. "And this time use the French press. Yesterday's pot tasted like dishwater." "Of course, Mom," I said softly, standing to retrieve the carafe. My older brother Marcus lounged across from me, his tailored suit probably worth more than my monthly rent. At 35, he'd perfected the art of looking important while doing very little. "So Sophie's still working at that. What is it again?" "Community Credit Union." "Regional Federal Credit Union," I corrected gently, pouring Mom's coffee with steady hands. "I'm a loan officer." Right, Marcus said with a dismissive wave. "Very quaint. While you're approving car loans for school teachers, I just closed a $3 million real estate deal." My sister Victoria snorted into her mimosa. "A loan officer. God, Sophie, you have an economics degree from Georgetown and you're working at a credit union. Do you know how embarrassing that is when my friends ask what my sister does?" "I like helping people," I said quietly, returning to my seat. "Helping people," Dad, Robert Harrison, repeated with barely concealed disdain. He'd built Harrison Properties from a single commercial building into a regional empire, and he measured success exclusively in net worth. "At 32, you should be building wealth, not helping people qualify for mortgages they can barely afford." I nodded, taking a small bite of omelet. I'd learned years ago that arguing only made these brunches longer. "Speaking of wealth," Mom said brightly, setting down her phone, "your father and I made an executive decision about your finances, Sophie. We've been monitoring that savings account you've been squirreling money into, the one you opened when you were 25, and frankly it was just sitting there doing nothing." Something cold settled in my stomach. "What do you mean monitoring? You made me co-signer when you opened it, remember?" Mom smiled like she was explaining something to a child. "You wanted my help setting it up because you were worried about doing it wrong." So sweet. I did remember. 7 years ago, fresh out of Georgetown and naive, I'd asked Mom to help me open a high-yield savings account. I'd been intimidated by the financial terminology and she'd seemed so helpful, so maternal, a rare moment of bonding I'd cherished. "What did you do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Dad leaned back in his chair with the satisfaction of someone about to deliver good news. "We emptied it. Every penny. And before you panic with your usual melodramatics, we invested it properly. Marcus has a development opportunity in the Riverside district. Luxury condos, very promising, and we used your savings as part of the family's investment stake." The room tilted slightly. "You took my money?" "We invested your money," Marcus corrected. "There's a difference, sophomore. That account had, about $180,000 in it? Just sitting there earning 2% interest? That's financial ignorance. In my development, you'll see 15 to 20% returns annually. If it succeeds," I said quietly. "When it succeeds," Marcus said firmly. "I don't do failures." Victoria refilled her mimosa. "Honestly, Sophie, you should be thanking them. You've never known how to handle money. Remember when you were 24 and you almost bought that investment property in the warehouse district? Thank God Dad talked you out of that disaster." I remembered. The warehouse district property would have cost me $85,000. It was now worth $340,000. Dad had convinced me it was too risky, that I didn't understand real estate. I'd trusted his expertise. "How much was in the account?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "About $184,000, Mom said casually. "You've been very diligent about your savings, darling. We're actually impressed you managed to accumulate that much on your little salary." My little salary. The loan officer position that paid $52,000 a year. Modest by their standards, comfortable by mine. I'd saved carefully for 7 years, living in a small apartment, driving a used Honda, packing lunches instead of eating out. "I need that money," I said softly. "You need it invested properly," Dad corrected. "Which it now is. Marcus's project breaks ground next month. In 2 years you'll have $220,000, maybe more." "You're welcome. But I didn't agree to invest in Marcus's project," I said, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. You didn't have to, Mom said brightly. I'm co-signer. I have full legal access to the account. We were actually doing you a favor, saving you from your own financial timidity. Marcus stood checking his watch. Look, Soph, I know change is scary for you. You've always been the cautious one, the one who plays it safe. But sometimes family has to push you toward better opportunities. In a few years you'll thank us. I needed that money for something specific. I tried again, my voice barely audible. For what? Victoria laughed. Another used car? A slightly less depressing apartment? Sophie, you live like a college student. You've never understood wealth building. That's why Dad and Mom are helping you. Dad stood, signaling the end of the discussion. The papers are already signed. Marcus's LLC now holds your investment along with the rest of the family's contributions. You're officially a stakeholder in Harrison Riverside Development. Congratulations. You made me a stakeholder without asking me? We made you a stakeholder despite yourself, Dad said, his tone final. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a tea time. Sophie, clear the table when you're done. Your mother and I are meeting the travel agent about the cruise this afternoon. They left me sitting there, surrounded by empty plates and the wreckage of my carefully constructed financial independence. I cleared the table mechanically, my hands steady despite the panic building in my chest. In the kitchen, loading the dishwasher with china that cost more per plate than I spent on groceries in a week, I let myself process what had just happened. $184,000. 7 years of saving. Gone. Transferred without my consent into Marcus's development project. A project I knew nothing about, had never evaluated, had never agreed to invest in. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and checked my banking app. The savings account showed a balance of $47.23. The interest that had accrued after they'd cleaned it out yesterday, too recent to steal. I sat on the kitchen floor back against the custom cabinets, and made a phone call to the number I'd memorized but never thought I'd need to use personally. Treasury Department, Financial Crimes Division, this is Agent Rebecca Walsh. Hi Rebecca. It's Sophie Harrison. There was a pause, then her voice shifted from professional to concerned. Sophie? Are you okay? You sound. I need to report a theft, I said quietly. From my personal account. What happened? Rebecca's tone had gone sharp, alert. My family accessed my savings account without permission and transferred the entire balance, $184,000, to invest in my brother's real estate development project. My mother was co-signer from when I opened it 7 years ago. They used that access to empty it. Another pause. Sophie, tell me this isn't the account I think it is. It is, I confirmed. Account number ending in 7734. The one the Treasury Department deposits my secondary compensation into. The Federal Executive Salary Account, Rebecca said slowly. Jesus, Sophie. Your family just stole federal funds. I know, I said softly. Do they know who you work for? Your actual job? No, I said. They think I'm just a loan officer at a credit union. Sophie, Rebecca's voice had gone very quiet. You're the Deputy Director of the Federal Reserve's Special Operations Division. You're not a loan officer. You're one of the highest-ranking financial executives in the federal government. I know what I am, I said. But my family has always seen me as the failure, the disappointment, the one who doesn't understand money. It was easier to let them think I was exactly what they believed me to be. Why? I thought about that. Because I wanted to see if they'd ever respect me for who I actually am, not what I achieve. And because I needed to know if they'd ever stop trying to control and diminish me. I took a breath. I have my answer now. What do you want to do? Rebecca asked. I want to file a formal complaint with Treasury's Financial Crimes Division, I said. They stole federal executive funds. That's a felony. Multiple felonies, actually. Are you sure? Rebecca's tone was gentle. This is your family, Sophie. Once we start this investigation, it can't be stopped. Federal jurisdiction doesn't care about family dynamics. I thought about 7 years of Sunday brunches. 7 years of casual dismissals, condescending comments, being treated like I was too stupid to understand my own finances. 7 years of watching them spend money ostentatiously while mocking my modest lifestyle. A lifestyle I maintained because my actual salary and benefits were confidential federal compensation that I couldn't openly discuss. I'm sure, I said. They need to learn that actions have consequences. Okay, Rebecca said. I'm going to need you to come to the office tomorrow morning. Bring all documentation, account statements, any communications with your family about the account, everything. We'll open a formal investigation. Thank you, Rebecca. Sophie. Her voice softened. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Family should be better than this. Yes, I said quietly. They should be. I finished cleaning the kitchen, then drove back to my depressing apartment. A modest 2-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood that cost $1,200 a month when I could easily afford 10 times that. But federal executives at my level were required to maintain operational security, which meant living below my actual means and maintaining a cover identity for protection. The credit union job was real. I worked there 2 days a week maintaining my cover and genuinely helping people with loans. The other 3 days I worked at the Federal Reserve's Classified Operations Center, overseeing financial crime investigations, monitoring systemic banking risks, and coordinating with international financial regulatory agencies. My family knew nothing about any of it. Monday morning I met Rebecca Walsh at the Treasury building downtown. At 45, she'd been investigating financial crimes for 20 years and had a reputation for being thoroughly, relentlessly competent. Coffee first, she said, handing me a cup as I entered her office. Then we deal with the felony your family committed. I sat down, cradling the warm cup. Tell me honestly, how bad is this? Very bad, Rebecca said bluntly. Your mother accessed an account without the primary account holder's permission and transferred federal executive funds to a private investment vehicle. That's theft of federal property, wire fraud, and potentially money laundering if we can prove they knew the source of the funds. They didn't know, I said. They genuinely think it was just my savings from a credit union salary. Their ignorance might reduce their culpability slightly, but it doesn't eliminate it, Rebecca said. Federal law is clear. Unauthorized access to federal executive accounts is a serious crime, regardless of intent or relationship. She pulled up a file on her computer. I pulled your records this morning. Your primary salary as deputy director is $185,000 annually. You also receive classified compensation for your oversight role in international banking security operations. That's the money that was going into the savings account, correct? Correct, I confirmed. The classified compensation is deposited monthly into that account. It's structured as a secondary income source to maintain my cover identity. About $2,100 per month after taxes. Which over 7 years would accumulate to. Rebecca calculated quickly, approximately $176,000, plus interest. The $184,000 in the account matches that timeline perfectly. She turned her screen toward me. Sophie, this account is flagged in federal systems as a protected executive asset. The moment your mother made that transfer, it triggered automatic alerts in 3 different agencies: Treasury, Federal Reserve Security, and FinCEN. I didn't know it would trigger alerts, I admitted. That's because you never needed to know, Rebecca said. Executive protection protocols are automatic. When someone accesses and drains a federal executive account, the system assumes it's either a security breach or a financial crime. Either way, it gets flagged immediately. He pulled up more files. As of this morning, we have a joint task force investigation opened. Treasury Fraud Division, FBI Financial Crimes Unit, and Federal Reserve Security. Your brother's development company is already under scrutiny. That was fast, I said quietly. Federal executive protection is taken very seriously, Rebecca said. If someone can steal from a deputy director of the Federal Reserve, what does that say about our security protocols? This isn't just about your money, Sophie. It's about institutional integrity. What happens next? Next, I take your formal statement. Then we execute search warrants for your mother's banking records, your brother's development company, and any other financial instruments where your money might have gone. We'll freeze assets, interview witnesses, and build a case. She paused. Sophie, your family is going to find out who you really are. There's no way to investigate this without revealing your actual position. I know, I said. I'm ready. The statement took 2 hours. Every detail of the Sunday brunch conversation, the history of the account, my mother's role as co-signer, the unauthorized transfer. Rebecca recorded everything, her expression growing more grim as the story unfolded. One more thing, she said when we finished. Do you want to press charges personally or leave it to federal prosecution? What's the difference? Federal prosecution happens regardless. They stole federal funds, so the government has standing to prosecute. But you can also file personal charges for theft and fraud. It makes the case stronger and ensures they can't claim this was just a family misunderstanding. I'll file personal charges, I said firmly. They need to understand this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was theft. Rebecca nodded approvingly. Good. I'll prepare the paperwork. As I was leaving, my phone rang. Marcus. Sophie, we need to talk, he said, his voice tight with stress. Something weird is happening. The bank called this morning and said they're freezing the development company's accounts pending a federal investigation. Do you know anything about this? Yes, I said simply. Yes. What do you mean yes? Why would you know about a federal investigation into my company? Because I triggered it, I said calmly. When you and Mom stole $184,000 from my account, you stole federal executive funds. That's a felony, Marcus. Multiple felonies, actually. There was a long silence. What are you talking about? Federal executive funds? Sophie, you work at a credit union. I work at a credit union 2 days a week, I corrected. As cover. My actual job is Deputy Director of the Federal Reserve's Special Operations Division. That savings account you raided was where my classified compensation was deposited. You didn't steal my personal savings, Marcus. You stole federal property. That's not possible, Marcus said, but his voice had lost all confidence. You're a loan officer. You live in a shitty apartment. You drive a 2015 Honda. I maintain a cover identity for security reasons, I explained patiently. Federal executives at my level are required to live below their means and maintain operational security. The shitty apartment and used car are part of my security protocol. You're lying, Marcus said, but he sounded desperate now. This is some kind of trick. Call the Federal Reserve's main number, I said. Ask for Deputy Director Sophie Harrison's office. They'll confirm my employment. Or wait a few hours. Treasury agents will be at Mom and Dad's house this afternoon with a search warrant. A search warrant? His voice had gone up an octave. Sophie, this is insane. We're family. We were trying to help you invest better. You were trying to control me, I corrected. You've spent my entire adult life treating me like I'm incompetent with money, dismissing my career, mocking my lifestyle. You never once considered that maybe I knew exactly what I was doing. But I need to go, Marcus. Treasury agents are waiting for me. I suggest you call a lawyer. A good one. Federal theft charges carry serious penalties. I ended the call. Rebecca was waiting by her car. That sounded satisfying. It was, I admitted. Is it wrong that I enjoyed that? Not even a little bit, Rebecca grinned. Come on. We've got search warrants to execute. The Harrison family estate looked exactly as it always did. Immaculate, expensive, intimidating. 3 black SUVs with federal plates were parked in the circular driveway. Agents in windbreakers with Treasury printed on the back were gathering near the front door. Mom answered the door in her tennis whites, her expression shifting from confusion to irritation. Sophie? What's going on? Who are all these people? Mrs. Harrison, Rebecca stepped forward, holding up her credentials. I'm Special Agent Rebecca Walsh, Treasury Department Financial Crimes Division. We have a warrant to search your home and seize any documents related to account number ending in 7734 and Harrison Riverside Development, LLC. Mom's face went pale. I don't understand. Sophie, what is this? This is the consequence of stealing federal funds, Mom, I said quietly. Dad appeared behind her, his golf clothes suggesting he'd just returned from the course. What the hell is going on here? Another agent stepped forward. Mr. Robert Harrison? I'm Special Agent Chin, FBI. We have some questions about unauthorized access to federal banking accounts and potential wire fraud. Wire fraud? Dad's face turned red. This is ridiculous. Sophie, what did you do? I reported a crime, I said. You and Mom stole $184,000 from my account without permission. That account held federal executive compensation. You committed multiple federal felonies. Federal executive compensation? Mom's voice was weak. Sophie, you work at a credit union. No, Mom. I work at the Federal Reserve. I'm the Deputy Director of Special Operations. The credit union job is cover. The account you raided was where my classified compensation was deposited. You stole federal property. Dad's lawyer arrived 20 minutes later. Expensive suit, expensive briefcase, expensive panic. He took one look at the search warrant and the assembled federal agents and his expression went grim. Don't say anything, he told Mom and Dad. Not a word until I've reviewed everything. But the damage was done. Agents were already carting out boxes of financial records, computers, files. Marcus arrived in the middle of it, his face ashen. This can't be happening, he kept saying. This can't be happening. Victoria showed up an hour later, summoned by frantic phone calls from Mom. She took one look at the federal agents processing the house and turned to me. You did this, she said, her voice shaking. You called the feds on your own family. I reported a crime, I said calmly. Mom and Dad committed theft and wire fraud. Marcus is being investigated for receiving stolen federal funds. Those are facts, not family drama. Over money? Victoria's voice rose. You're destroying the family over money? Over respect, I corrected. Over being dismissed and controlled and treated like I'm too stupid to manage my own life. Over 32 years of being the disappointment because I didn't measure success in real estate deals and designer clothes. You're insane, Victoria said. You've lost your mind. No, I said quietly. I finally found my voice. Agent Walsh approached with a tablet. Sophie, we need you to verify some information. Is this the transfer record showing $184,000 moving from your account to Harrison Riverside Development LLC on Sunday afternoon? I reviewed the document. Yes, that's correct. And you did not authorize this transfer? I did not. And you were not informed of the transfer until after it occurred? Correct. I was informed at Sunday brunch, approximately 16 hours after the transfer was executed. Walsh nodded. That's clear-cut unauthorized access and wire fraud. Thank you. Dad's lawyer was having an intense conversation with him and Mom on the front steps. I could see Dad's face getting redder, his gestures more agitated. The lawyer kept shaking his head. Finally, the lawyer approached Agent Walsh. My clients would like to return the funds immediately. This was a misunderstanding. This was a federal crime, Walsh interrupted. The funds will be returned as part of the investigation, but that doesn't eliminate criminal liability. Your clients accessed a protected federal account without authorization and transferred federal property. The FBI is also investigating potential violations of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, since the transfer was executed electronically without proper authorization. Computer fraud? The lawyer looked sick. Look, these are respected members of the community. Robert Harrison built Harrison Properties from nothing. They didn't know they were accessing federal funds. Their knowledge of the source is irrelevant to the unauthorized access charge, Walsh said firmly. They accessed an account they didn't have permission to access and stole money that didn't belong to them. That's theft regardless of whose money it was. Marcus's lawyer had arrived. Younger, hungrier, less experienced. My client was merely the recipient of an investment from family members. He had no knowledge of any impropriety. Your client accepted and deposited $184,000 of stolen federal funds, Agent Chin said. That makes him complicit in money laundering at minimum. We're also investigating whether he knew or should have known the funds were obtained illegally. He didn't know. Marcus protested. How could I know? Sophie works at a credit union. Sophie maintains a cover identity for security reasons, Chin corrected. But you didn't verify the source of the funds before accepting them. That's a due diligence failure that could constitute reckless disregard for the law. Victoria was crying now, big dramatic sobs. You're destroying us. Over what? Hurt feelings. Because we don't take you seriously. Because you committed crimes, I said simply. You stole. That's not hurt feelings, Victoria. That's felony theft. Agent Walsh's phone rang. She stepped away, had a brief conversation, then returned with a satisfied expression. That was the U.S. Attorney's office. They're filing formal charges. Diane Harrison and Robert Harrison will be charged with unauthorized access to federal accounts, wire fraud and theft of federal property. Marcus Harrison will be charged with receipt of stolen property and potential money laundering. Arraignments are scheduled for Thursday morning. Mom collapsed into a deck chair. I don't understand. We were helping her invest. How is that a crime? You took money without permission, Walsh explained with surprising patience. The fact that you intended to invest it doesn't matter. You accessed an account you didn't have authorization to access and took money that wasn't yours to take. That's theft, Mrs. Harrison. The federal designation just makes it worse. Dad found his voice. Sophie, please. We can fix this. We'll return every penny plus interest. You can drop the charges. I can't drop the federal charges, I said. Those belong to the government. You didn't just steal from me, you stole federal executive funds. The Treasury Department has to prosecute that to protect institutional integrity. But the personal charges, Dad pressed. Your personal complaint. You could withdraw that. I could, I agreed. But I won't. Sophie, please, Mom begged. We're your family. Family doesn't steal from each other, I said quietly. Family doesn't dismiss and demean and control each other. Family respects boundaries and choices and autonomy. You've done none of those things for 32 years. We were trying to help you, Mom insisted. You were trying to control me, I corrected. There's a difference. The search concluded around 6 p.m. Agents had removed dozens of boxes of records, multiple computers, and had frozen several accounts pending investigation. Marcus's development project was dead. No bank would touch it with an active federal investigation. Agent Walsh approached me as I was leaving. Your family is facing serious charges, Sophie. Wire fraud alone carries up to 20 years. Combined with the other charges, they're looking at significant prison time if convicted. Will they be convicted? I asked. Almost certainly, Walsh said. The evidence is clear. They accessed your account, took your money, transferred it without permission. That's textbook theft. The federal designation makes it aggravated theft. And they did it electronically across state lines, which triggers the wire fraud statute. It's an easy prosecution. What about a plea deal? Possible, Walsh acknowledged. First-time offenders, no violence, willingness to make restitution. The U.S. attorney might offer reduced charges in exchange for guilty pleas and full repayment. But they'll still have federal felony convictions on their records. Good, I said quietly. No second thoughts? Walsh asked. This is going to change your relationship with them permanently. Our relationship was already broken, I said. They just didn't realize it because I was too polite to tell them. Walsh smiled. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Financial abuse is still abuse even when it comes from family. Especially when it comes from family. Thursday morning I attended the arraignment. Mom, Dad, and Marcus stood before a federal magistrate, their expensive lawyers beside them, their faces showing a mixture of fear and disbelief. The charges were read. Unauthorized access to protected federal accounts, wire fraud, theft of federal property, receipt of stolen property. The magistrate set bail. $250,000 for Dad, $150,000 for Mom, $200,000 for Marcus. Dad paid everyone's bail with a check that cleared the development fund accounts before they were frozen. Even facing federal charges, he couldn't resist throwing money at the problem. Afterward, in the courthouse hallway, Dad approached me. He looked older, diminished, the confidence stripped away. How long have you been working for the Federal Reserve? He asked quietly. 7 years, I said. Since I graduated from Georgetown. I was recruited directly into the Special Operations Division after completing my master's thesis on systemic banking risks. A master's thesis? Mom looked stricken. You have a master's degree? In financial regulatory policy, I confirmed. From Georgetown's graduate program. I completed it while you thought I was just working at the credit union. You never asked about my education, so I never told you. Why? Dad's voice broke. Why did you hide all of this? Because I wanted you to respect me for who I am, not what I achieve, I said. I wanted you to see me as competent and capable without needing impressive titles to prove it. But you never did. You saw me as the failure, the disappointment, the one who needed rescuing from my own financial incompetence. We were wrong, Mom whispered. Sophie, we were so wrong. Yes, I agreed. You were. Marcus stepped forward, his usual swagger completely gone. The U.S. attorney offered a plea deal. Guilty plea to reduced charges, full restitution, probation instead of prison time. Our lawyers are recommending we take it. That's probably wise, I said. Do you want us to take it? He asked. Or do you want us to go to trial? To suffer more? I want you to take responsibility, I said. Whether that's through a plea or a trial is up to you. But you need to acknowledge that what you did was wrong. Not a misunderstanding, not a well-intentioned mistake. Fraud. Crimes. Dad's lawyer approached. Ms. Harrison, if your family accepts the plea agreement and makes full restitution, would you consider asking the U.S. attorney to be lenient in sentencing recommendations? That depends, I said. On what? On whether they actually understand what they did wrong, I said. If they think this is just about money, then no. But if they understand they violated my autonomy, my trust, my boundaries, if they understand they treated me like property to manage instead of a person to respect, then maybe. I looked at my family, 3 people who'd spent decades making me feel small, inadequate, less than. I'm not interested in revenge, I said quietly. I'm interested in change. Real change. If you can demonstrate that you understand why what you did was wrong beyond just, it was illegal, then I'll advocate for leniency. But I need to see genuine understanding, not just fear of consequences. Mom was crying quietly now. I'm so sorry, Sophie. Thought I was helping. I thought you didn't know how to manage money and I wanted to protect you. From what? I asked. From my own competence. From making my own choices. Mom, I'm a deputy director of the Federal Reserve. I oversee billion-dollar financial crime investigations. I coordinate international banking regulations. I've testified before Congress about systemic financial risks. And you thought I needed you to rescue me from my own timid financial decisions. The full weight of it seemed to finally hit her. Oh my God. I've been living below my means intentionally, I continued. The modest apartment, the used car, the careful spending, those weren't signs of financial incompetence. They were security protocols required by my position. I couldn't live ostentatiously because that would compromise my cover identity and potentially endanger me. Endanger you? Dad looked stricken. Your job is dangerous? I work in financial crimes, I said. I investigate organized crime, money laundering, terrorist financing. Yes, it can be dangerous. That's why I maintain a low profile. That's why my salary is structured as classified compensation. That's why I've never talked about it. And we never asked, Victoria said quietly. She'd been silent throughout the arraignment, but now she spoke. We never asked about your life because we'd already decided what your life was. We wrote the story and cast you as the failure, and we never bothered to check if the story was true. No, I agreed. You didn't. The lawyer cleared his throat. Ms. Harrison, if your family accepts the plea deal, makes full restitution and participates in family counseling to address the underlying issues, would that demonstrate the kind of understanding you're looking for? Family counseling? Marcus looked skeptical. You need it, I said bluntly. All of you. You need to understand that respect isn't conditional on achievement, that love doesn't come with conditions, and that controlling other people's choices, even with good intentions, is wrong. We'll do it, Mom said quickly. Whatever it takes. Sophie will do whatever it takes. I looked at Agent Walsh, who'd been observing from a respectful distance. She nodded slightly, confirmation that the offer was genuine. Hey, I said. Accept the plea. Make full restitution. Complete the counseling. And if I see real change, real understanding, then I'll ask the U.S. attorney to consider that in sentencing. Thank you, Dad said, his voice rough with emotion. Sophie, thank you. Don't thank me yet, I said. Thank me when you've actually done the work. The plea agreement was finalized 2 weeks later. Mom, Dad, and Marcus all pleaded guilty to reduced charges. Misdemeanor unauthorized access for Mom and Dad, receiving stolen property for Marcus. The felony charges were dropped in exchange for guilty pleas, full restitution of $184,000 plus interest, 2 years of probation, 200 hours of community service each, and mandatory participation in family counseling. The $184,000 was returned to my account within 3 days. Marcus's development project collapsed. Investors pulled out the moment federal charges were filed. He lost his entire investment, his reputation, and his confidence. The first family counseling session was painful. Dr. Sarah Chin, the therapist assigned to our case, didn't let anyone hide behind excuses. "Let's be clear about what happened here," she said during our second session. "Diane and Robert, you accessed your daughter's account without permission and stole $184,000. That's not a misunderstanding. That's theft. Can you say that?" Mom struggled. "We thought we were helping." "Say the words," Dr. Chin insisted. "I stole from my daughter." It took Mom 10 minutes to say it, tears streaming down her face. "I stole from my daughter." "Why?" Dr. Chin pressed. "Because I didn't think she could manage money on her own." "Why didn't you think that?" Because she didn't live the way I thought successful people should live. She lived modestly. She didn't show off. She didn't talk about her achievements. I thought that meant she wasn't achieving anything. But it actually meant she was achieving things you couldn't even comprehend," Dr. Chin said. "She's a federal executive managing billion-dollar investigations, and you thought she needed you to teach her about money. Why?" Mom broke down completely. "Because I needed to feel important. I needed to feel like she needed me. If she was competent and independent, then what was my role?" It was the most honest thing Mom had said to me in years. Dad's breakthrough came 3 sessions later. "I measured Sophie by my standards," he admitted. "Real estate development, visible wealth, public success. She didn't have any of those things, so I assumed she was failing. It never occurred to me that she was succeeding on a completely different level, one I didn't even understand existed." Marcus took the longest. 6 sessions in, he finally admitted, "I treated Sophie like she was stupid because it made me feel smart. I built my entire identity on being the successful one, the achiever, the one Dad was proud of. If Sophie was actually more successful than me, which she clearly is, then what did that make me?" "It made you human," Dr. Chin said gently. "It made you someone who built their self-worth on comparison and external validation instead of genuine accomplishment. That's not uncommon, Marcus. But it's something you need to work on." 4 months into the counseling process, Mom invited me to lunch. Just the 2 of us at a quiet restaurant far from their usual haunts. "I've been thinking," she said carefully, "about why I never saw you clearly. Why I needed you to be less than you are." "And?" I prompted. "And I think it's because I'm not particularly accomplished myself," she admitted. "I married your father and became Mrs. Harrison. That was my achievement. When you didn't follow the script, wealthy husband, social status, visible success, I didn't know how to categorize you. So I decided you were failing instead of recognizing that you were succeeding in ways I never had." "That must have been hard to realize," I said quietly. "It was devastating," she admitted. "But necessary. Sophie, I'm proud of you. Not just for your job or your success, but for your integrity. For maintaining your values even when we mocked them. For living authentically even when it made you look less impressive to us." "Thank you," I said. "That means more than you know." "Will you ever forgive us?" she asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I'm willing to see if we can build something new. Not the old relationship where I was the disappointing daughter you tried to fix. Something new where we're equals." "I'd like that," Mom said softly. 6 months after the arraignment, I received a call from Agent Walsh. "Thought you'd want to know. The U.S. Attorney is closing your case. Your family completed all requirements of the plea agreement. The counseling reports are positive and full restitution was made. They're recommending that the convictions be eligible for expungement in 3 years if your family maintains clean records." "That's good news," I said. "It is," Walsh agreed. "Sophie, I've worked financial crimes for 2 decades. Most family theft cases end in permanent estrangement. The fact that your family is actually doing the work to change, that's rare. You should be proud." "I'm cautiously optimistic," I said. "That's wise," Walsh laughed. "But for what it's worth, I think they're going to make it. They're actually learning." That Sunday I went to family brunch for the first time in 6 months. The atmosphere was different. Quieter, more careful, but also more genuine. "Sophie," Dad said as I sat down, Before we eat, I want to say something. Everyone turned to look at him. I'm proud of you, he said. Not for your title or your salary or your success, although those things are impressive. I'm proud of you for having the courage to hold us accountable. For demanding respect instead of accepting dismissal. For being stronger than we ever gave you credit for. Thank you, Dad, I said softly. Tell us about your work, Victoria said. If you can. We realized we've never actually asked what you do. I smiled. I can tell you some of it. I spent the next hour talking about financial crime investigations, systemic banking risks, international regulatory coordination. They listened, actually listened, asking intelligent questions, showing genuine interest. That sounds terrifying, Marcus said. And incredibly important. It is, I agreed. It's also deeply satisfying. I'm protecting people's financial security on a massive scale. That matters to me. More than impressing us ever did, Mom said quietly. Yes, I agreed. Much more. As I drove home that evening, I reflected on the past 6 months. The investigation, the arraignment, the plea deal, the counseling, the slow rebuilding of broken relationships. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Walsh. Heard brunch went well. Proud of you, Sophie. You handled this exactly right. I smiled, typing back. Thank you for everything. I couldn't have done it without your support. Another text, this one from Dad. Thank you for giving us a chance to be better. We don't deserve it, but we're grateful for it. I pulled into my parking space at my depressing apartment. The one that was actually part of my security protocol. The one that represented my commitment to living authentically rather than ostentatiously. Inside, I changed out of my brunch clothes into comfortable jeans and a sweatshirt. I made tea, regular grocery store tea, not the expensive imported stuff my family drank, and settled onto my second-hand couch with a book about international banking regulations. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from Mom. I love you. Not for what you've achieved, just for who you are. I read it twice, then set the phone down. It had taken a federal investigation, criminal charges, and 6 months of intensive counseling. But maybe, my family was finally starting to see me. Not as the failure they needed to fix. Not as the disappointment who didn't understand money. But as Sophie Harrison, Deputy Director of the Federal Reserve, competent financial executive, and person worthy of respect. It was about time.